Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to the Film Brits Podcast. My name is Trilbee, I'm your host, the RJ McReady of film criticism, and yes, it's finally October. It is now time to deck the halls with lots of blood and all the organs and all of the goodness that Halloween and all of the scary stuff over the next few weeks will provide us. But now it's just time to talk about Film Brits, and yes, just a quick update in terms of the Film Brits Patreon, the Trilbee Patreon. Patreon screwed up. I'm not going to get paid at all for the previous month. For the first 3 episodes of the podcast, no payments are going to be made because Patreon screwed up. And everyone who has, there have been like maybe a couple of people, like a few dollars here and there that have gone through, that have been paid through. You're going to get refunds. There's only like 2 or 3 of you, and I know that I've got like 15 patrons, but all people whose money has gone through and nobody else's has, those people whose money has gone through, you'll get refunded and we'll just start afresh next month. Those of you, just check your patrons, check your Patreon accounts and check your payments and everything, just make sure that everything is in order. But Patreon screwed up on their end, and I'm not going to get paid at all for the previous 3 episodes of Film Brits, which is absolutely annoying, and my slipper is caught underneath my chair. But yeah, so be sure to check your patrons. But those of you who have paid a couple of dollars, whose payments have actually been processed and nobody else's has, you're going to get refunded. I'm going to sort that out. It's really, really frustrating, but them's the breaks, I guess. Now, let's go to the first segment of the Film Brits podcast, the first one of October. It is Share the Love. Now, for those of you who don't know, who may be new to the podcast, there's so much negativity and so much hatred and bile and drama and stuff on the internet, so this segment is just to try and counteract that. And sharing the love, I've got a little bit of bias, but I'm going to be sharing the love with the 5 Who fans, and the reason that this is relevant is because I've been doing some videos for them over the past week. They've been doing a 6 Who fan takeover. They're basically a Doctor Who collaborative channel where there's 5 of them, but right now there's 6 of them who talk all things Doctor Who, talk about television, talk about sci-fi and things like that. And because Doctor Who has not been so great over the past couple of years, and because there is no show in 2016, they've really been pushing the boat out and creating some really abstract comedy sketches and some really weird stuff. And over the next few weeks, I've been involved in it. You are going to see much weirder and much darker and much crazier and much funnier stuff. They've got just over 9,000 subscribers, and they are currently in the middle of a 6 Who fans takeover being orchestrated by YouTuber, actor and television presenter Chris Johnson from CBBC and other things, and his own podcast. I will share the love with him on in a future podcast. But the 5 Who fans are currently Billy, Danny, Crystal, Livy and Phoenix. Those are the 5 Who fans at the moment, and although there are 6, including me, who are taking them over, so continuity is weird, but be sure to check those out if you're interested in just funny sci-fi stuff, or especially into Doctor Who. Be sure to share the love with them and tell them that Trilbee sent you. And of course, be sure to check out my video, my Doctor Who Existential Crisis, which I filmed with Chris. Such a really fun time, and I'm going to be making a couple of appearances in some future episodes in the very near future. So there, and before you say, oh, you're not going to have time to do it, already done it. Already filmed them. That was done this past weekend. Now, this podcast is a couple of days late, and the reason I let people know on Patreon, I let people know on Twitter. Now, the reason that this is late is because this podcast is going to be talking about original movies, and I'm going to be asking the question, is Hollywood more original than ever? And as a result, I wanted to make sure I watched a couple more original movies. I spent the past couple of days watching Swiss Army Man, The Nice Guys, and a couple of other original films that I'd really like to talk about. Depressingly, I've still not seen Kubo and the Two Strings, which is like the big original movie of the moment, and the reason for that is because my local multiplex is only showing it in the afternoon, and I'm normally very busy in the afternoon. There are no evening screenings. I've got to find an afternoon, preferably a weekday afternoon, where I'm free and I can actually watch Kubo and the Two Strings and maybe a couple of things around it, which is really, really frustrating. But I am going to make sure I watch it. But I have watched quite a few other original films over the past few days in order to talk about this subject. Is Hollywood more original than ever? Now, in the wake of Independence Day resurgence, in the wake of Alice Through the Looking Glass, in the wake of Ghostbusters, in the wake of Zoolander 2, all of these recent high-profile bombs or flops or disappointments like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow, people have been saying, is Hollywood finally going to learn its lesson? Are there too many reboots? Are there too many sequels? Are there too many prequels, sequels, whatever? And I'm here to say No, well, maybe there are too many. Let's face the facts here. When we get down to brass tacks, when we get down to numbers, there are more sequels, remakes, and reboots being made now than at any point in Hollywood history. That's just a fact. That's just breaking down the numbers. There are more reboots, more sequels, prequels, remakes, adaptations, non-original movies being made now than at any point in Hollywood history. And I have no idea why, but the camera is really misty. That's really weird. It's not misty in this corner. It might just be the lens. If you are watching the YouTube video or whatever, you may just be seeing my thumb. But if it's audio, this bit's going to be really awkward. But anyway, yeah, there are more remakes, sequels, and adaptations and unoriginal movies, quote, unoriginal movies being made now than at any point in Hollywood history. But however, there are more films in general being made now than at any point in Hollywood's history. Like, there was a time maybe only 100 films would come out from Hollywood each and every single year. That number is now approaching 700 to 800 movies, and that's just English-speaking Hollywood, American, Western stuff. That doesn't even take into account Bollywood. That doesn't take into account China, Europe, and no, I almost sound like Donald Trump then. China! That doesn't count China. We gotta build a wall. We gotta prevent these mermaid movies. We gotta prevent these pandas. We gotta prevent all of these films from making their way onto our shores. We gotta make Hollywood great again. More reboots. More sequels. Get the Magnificent Seven. And of course, but I think what people are asking is we want some more high profile. Why is the camera so misty? Gonna get a wipe here and clean the lens. Does that help at all? I might have just made it worse. Hopefully that's fixed it, but anyway, yeah, I think what people are talking about is they want more high profile, more bigger original films, but honestly, I just think saying you want more original films in Hollywood is very much the, we don't care if it didn't make any money, we're just glad that people enjoyed it, of the film community. It's something that you're expected to say, but you never actually mean, or you very rarely actually mean it. Like, oh, we made this really big, expensive movie, but hardly anyone saw it. Like, it made $10 million at the box office on a $200 million budget, but people loved it. We're happy that's happened, but in reality, that film has just been a massive failure because it's hardly made any money, and it's just a nice way to try and feel like you've done the right thing. People enjoyed it, therefore it's a success, when you actually need to also recoup those losses, otherwise it's just going to be a massive failure in the eyes of Hollywood. People say they want original films, yet they never go and see original films, and people will say, but Trilbee, hardly any original films come out. Right, I have in front of me a list of all of the original films that come out, that have come out and are going to come out in 2016. Now, I've eliminated sequels, I've eliminated prequels, I've eliminated biopics, I've eliminated adaptations from books, from the only thing I've not eliminated are adaptations of short films, but those short films become feature films, kind of like how Whiplash became, started off as a short film at Sundance, then became its own film. I've kept a couple of those, but that doesn't really make up a big amount of the list. These are all of the original films that are going to come out in 2016, and while I read off this list, maybe think about whether or not Hollywood does actually make more original films. I'm going to take a quick drink here before I start. Might be here a while. And these are not just indie things that will only show up your art house stuff. There's a couple of those, but this is going to be broad across the board. You could go into a Cineworld the weekend this film came out, and there's a very high chance you would have been able to see it. Now, The Hateful Eight, A War, Backtrack, Capture the Flag, Dirty Grandpa, Youth, Rams, A Bigger Splash, The Green Inferno, Bone Tomahawk, How to Be Single, The Mermaid, 999, Grimsby, The Benefactor, The Forest, Hail Caesar, The Other Side of the Door, Time Out of Mind, Anomalisa, The Witch, The Boy, Welcome to Me, Zootropolis, Boulevard, Hardcore Henry, Midnight Special, Criminal, Eye in the Sky, Friend Request, Bastille Day, Jane Got a Gun, Louder Than Bombs, Demolition, Golden Years, Son of Saul, The Darkness, Everybody Wants Some, Green Room, Sing Street, Money Monster, The Nice Guys, The Boss, Embrace of the Serpent, Mother's Day, When Marnie Was There, Gods of Egypt, The Meddler, The Secret Life of Pets. And if you're thinking, yeah, that's a lot of original films, but it must nearly be done now. Oh boy, we're only halfway through the year. Central Intelligence, Notes on Blindness, Maggie's Plan, The Neon Demon, Keanu, Men and Chicken, Songs for Amy, Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, Nerve, The Shallows, Wiener Dog, Lights Out, 9 Lives, Bad Moms, Kids in Love, Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping, Cafe Society, Morgan, Sausage Party, Captain Fantastic, Don't Breathe, Hell or High Water, Kubo and the Two Strings, 31, Imperium, Swiss Army Man, Bloodfather, The Greasy Strangler, War on Everyone, Storks, I, Daniel Blake, The Comedian's Guide to Survival, Keeping Up with the Joneses, The Accountant, Arrival, The Edge of 17, Moana, Office Christmas Party, Ballerina, Passengers, Collateral Beauty. And I didn't even mention all of them. There's quite a few much smaller, more lower profile films that I will undoubtedly have missed. Those are all of the original films that I at least know about in 2016. Let's just do a quick word count on how many films those are, because I have not counted because I'm a silly boy. Those are... That's 91 films. 91 films. And I didn't even mention probably like half of them. And people say that Hollywood doesn't make original films. Now, in order to find out if Hollywood is more original than ever, we've got to ask a fundamental question. What is original? Now, it sounds like a really abstract, really philosophical question, like, what is original? But, you know, it's kind of like let's narrow down the criteria a little bit more from what people want to see. When they think... what's not an original film? They think, okay, a sequel or a cinematic universe film or a prequel or a reboot. Jurassic World, not an original film. Ghostbusters, not an original film. Magnificent Seven, not an original film. But when you think, okay, so it's a film that doesn't have a pre-existing source material or pre-existing film before it, when you think of that, then what really is original? Like, for example, The Hateful Eight is technically an original film, but even its very title takes the Magnificent Seven. The title is a play on the number of people in the title. It's a western, and it does have some unoriginal elements. Like Kurt Russell is in it as somebody who he doesn't know who to trust in a cold, frosty environment. That is the thing. Let's go further down. Let's take a look at Triple Nine. Triple Nine is another original film, but it's basically just any other crime drama. It is a crime drama. What else have we got? Hardcore Henry. That's more original, but its first person influence is very unoriginal in terms of films, in terms of doing them for the duration. But it's just taking source material from video games. Eye in the Sky. Yes, technically an original film, but it does draw inspiration from real-life conflicts, drone warfare, very topical subjects. Same with Louder Than Bombs in terms of in terms of how warfare and how things like that can affect families. The Secret Life of Pets. Yes, it's technically an original film, but the plot, it's Toy Story. There's one very content person who has a master above them, like for example the dog in Secret Life of Pets, they've got the owner, and Woody has got Andy in Toy Story. Then all of a sudden a third party comes in, and the owner starts showing a bit more affection to that other person, so they try and kick them out, and in doing so they go on a massive adventure outside of the house or the apartment. The Secret Life of Pets is basically Toy Story, even though it is technically original. The Shallows is kind of, it's very similar to Jaws and those shark exploitation films. Popstar, Never Stop Never Stopping. Technically an original film, but it is drawing from real life figures in the public eye, as well as a satire of what is currently modern and popular in music, and it's also created by the Lonely Island people, so that their influences and their style of music is there. I, Daniel Blake, which comes out in a couple of weeks in the UK, technically an original film, but it is drawing upon cultural commentary and political commentary about UK's benefit system. Storks, original film, it's drawing from the Stork myth. Keeping Up with the Joneses, an original film, but it is taking its title from the Keeping Up with the Joneses comic strip from like the early 20th century, the late 19th century, I believe that's it. Moana is an original film, Disney film, but it is a Disney fairy tale movie. Kubo and the Two Strings, yes, it's an original movie, but it's drawing from Eastern mythology. Morgan, it's original, but it's drawing influence from movies like Ex Machina or Splice, both of which are also original movies. Nothing is ever truly original. Even the original films are somehow not original. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when people say we want more original movies in Hollywood, they don't really know what they're asking for. They just know that it sounds good. They know that when Jon Favreau announces via his Facebook and Twitter, I'm doing The Lion King, and then some people are just going to say, why are there so many remakes? I want more original movies. When at the same time they are making that comment, Kubo and the Two Strings, Don't Breathe, Captain Fantastic, Sausage Party, 31, Imperium, Swiss Army Man, are all playing in theatres, and they're not going to see them, but they're going to see Jungle Book. You're damn right they're going to go see Jungle Book, they're going to go see Independence Day Resurgence, they're going to go see The Lion King, they're going to go see Captain America Civil War. This year we have had a lot of high-profile disappointments, like Ghostbusters, in terms of the box office. Ben-Hur, Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow, and people think this is us saying we are sick of reboots and sequels and remakes, we are sending a message to Hollywood. You're not, though. You're sending the message that you're going to be more selective with what reboots, remakes and sequels that you're going to watch. Because if you still look in the top 10 of the year, the top 10 highest grossing films, you find Captain America Civil War, which is a sequel slash cinematic universe installment. Zootopia, that's an original film that's made $1 billion. That's a highly successful original film. That Disney were like, this is an original film, we're going to make it, but it's still sort of a play on the talking animal genre. Is it truly original? I'd say it is by the definition that it is not as based on a sequel, but then we find Finding Dory, The Jungle Book, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Secret Life of Pets, basically Toy Story, but if they were pets, Deadpool, Suicide Squad, The Mermaid, which is a Chinese film which draws from their own cultural and mythic influences, and then we find X-Men Apocalypse. We do have three original films in the top 10. Two of them are animated films, and one of them is a movie that has made almost its entire gross in China. So when you say, oh, we didn't see Ben-Hur because we're sick of remakes and reboots and sequels, okay, what did you see? Oh, I saw Finding Dory, I saw Captain America Civil War, I saw X-Men Apocalypse. There's a really interesting quote that Shane Black said when The Nice Guys was released, when talking about whether or not there was going to be a sequel to The Nice Guys. And The Nice Guys, another original film, technically yes, but it is very much drawing on Shane Black's style that he cemented in Lethal Weapon or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and its aesthetic influences are in those 70s and 80s exploitation, crime, the whole neon aesthetic in the soundtrack. Original, yes, but it is drawing from very well-established influences. But The Nice Guys, when he was talking about whether or not there would be a sequel, and the ending of The Nice Guys does set up for there to be more stories, he says, I think it's a little premature to consider a sequel. I don't believe in jinxes necessarily, but we really need people to see this one before we can even talk about that. We're up against some very stiff superhero competition, and we just need people to, you know, maybe see Captain America 6 times, but not the 7th, and see us instead. And there's a lot of truth in that. People will be like, we want to see more original films, we want to see more original films. Oh, I saw Deadpool 3 times. You could have seen it once and maybe given a ticket to Hardcore Henry. Or maybe you could have given a ticket to, let's say, Money Monster. And when people say, okay, we want more original films, but we want more bigger, more elaborate, much more high-profile, star-studded original films, they are making them. Like the list I mentioned before, Hateful Eight is a big-name Tarantino film. What else have we got? We do have Hail Caesar, that was star-studded, that had so many big names in it. Boulevard, Robin Williams' last movie. So that was very high profile for fans of Robin Williams, and of course the distributor did a very good job. They weren't incredibly tasteless. They were like, yeah, this is Robin Williams' last movie, but we're not going to sell it on that. The Nice Guys, Shane Black, the director of the $1 billion Iron Man 3, Ryan Gosling, Russell Crowe, big name stars. That Warner Brothers had a big marketing campaign for The Nice Guys. They had like 4 trailers. They did a really good job promoting it, and it didn't make its money back. It was actually one of summer's biggest bombs. Of course, we've got movies like Gods of Egypt. We've got Jupiter Ascending. It feels like every year there's one big original film, or at least one big blockbuster that kind of goes against the grain, and it always ends up flopping. Jupiter Ascending was a big bomb. Gods of Egypt was also a big bomb, but they were also not very good. So you kind of have this balance where, okay, we want more original films. Okay, we make an original film, it's terrible. But do you go see it to support an original film? Or do you not see it because you want good original films? Well, good, bad, and mediocre original films are coming out all of the damn time. So it's hard to kind of pick that battle. And when you are saying to Hollywood, we want more original films, but you don't go and see them, but instead you go see Captain America Civil War 6 times, your words are meaningless. I think you kind of waive the right to complain. Like when there's someone on my Facebook page, you know who you are, who complains that there are so many reboots, remakes, and sequels all the time. And I'm always naming these new original films that are out in cinemas right now. But then he's like, no, I saw Finding Dory. No, I saw Independence Day Resurgence. I saw this, I saw that. It's like, no, you kind of, you have empty words. Your threats are meaningless in a sense. Like, there are lots of high-profile films. Keanu had a pretty big marketing campaign. No one saw that. The Neon Demon was the big indie hit. Nobody saw that. The Shallows did actually make a lot of money. That did well. Bad Moms did very well. Lights Out. Original horror is doing very, very well. Like Don't Breathe and Lights Out. That made a lot of money. So when you say we want more original films, they are making them. I've listed nearly 100 of them that came out this past year alone. But even I think one thing that has stood out in terms of the sequels, reboots, and remakes that have come out is that there are a lot of original elements in them. Like, for example, Jurassic World made like $1.5 billion. That's technically a sequel. It's like a delayed sequel, a late in the game sequel. But that had the dinosaur theme park that we were teased and promised in the original Jurassic World. It had the Indominus Rex. These are technically original elements. We hadn't, in the franchise or even in other films, we had not seen a fully working, fully functional dinosaur theme park. And I think that's one reason why Jurassic World was a success. The marketing campaign was also very, very good, and it was also a solid movie. But it had original elements in it, whereas Independence Day Resurgence, which was also a late-stage sequel that came 20 years after the original, that wasn't original. That was just a retread of the previous film, and it just really wasn't adding anything new to the genre. That can also go the other way. Like, not just because you have original elements in your film does not mean that your movie made money, but for example, in Alice Through the Looking Glass, Time, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, felt like a very original character. He's mentioned in Lewis Carroll's works by name, but I don't believe he ever actually appeared as a character. But Sacha Baron Cohen's interpretation and the visuals surrounding where he lived, those were original elements, and those were actually the best parts of that very disappointing and very lackluster film. In Ghostbusters, even most people who hate it love Kate McKinnon's Gillian Holtzman. That felt like a very original character, especially in this current landscape where we do have. They never confirmed her to be lesbian, but I think there's enough hints in the movie to sort of get that impression. A lesbian tech head who's very eccentric, who is very, what you see is what you get, lacking an internal editor, but she's also a very real person, as demonstrated towards the closing moments of the film when she has that moment in the restaurant. That's a very original character. It felt very fresh, and what Sony and Paul Feig and whatever, say what you will about the film, but what they did was that they took the name Ghostbusters and they used it to portray a very original character. They took, and whereas if you got something like, say, Suicide Squad, where they were just basically ripping off Guardians of the Galaxy, and Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess you could say it is not original. It's based off a comic book property, and it is also it's also in a cinematic universe. But name me one other film that has a talking raccoon who is also friends with the talking tree, and a green lady, and a orangey, greeny, reddy man thing played by Dave Bautista. You really can't. It's original in its own genre. It's original in the current movie-going landscape. And when people are like, oh, there are no, like, Marvel are not original, the Thor franchise is something that is completely alien to the movie-going landscape. Thor: The Dark World had it had many homages to like Flash Gordon for the serials from the 30s, sorry. Or was it the 50s? I can't remember, but the old high concept cosmic sci-fi that was all the rage when televisions were still playing in black and white, but felt so original and distinct now. And when you get something like The Jungle Book, which is technically an adaptation of Rudyard Kipling. Is it Rudyard Kipling? It is based off of a series of books, and then it became a musical by Disney, and Disney remade their own musical as opposed to Jon Favreau taking inspiration from the books. This is more an adaptation of the animated musical. They changed the ending. They changed many of the beats and the moments in the film, and they actually improved upon it. Disney remade Cinderella, they made many changes, and they've improved on it. And I hope Jon Favreau does the same thing for The Lion King, because that third act of The Lion King technically original, based on Hamlet. Was it Macbeth? It's based on Hamlet. What am I on about? I don't know my Shakespeare. The sequel, based on Romeo and Juliet. You take these real-life inspirations from real life, from popular culture, from your current political climate, like Eye in the Sky or I, Daniel Blake, or you take inspiration, like The Lion King did with Hamlet, and you make something new out of it. I think that technically still counts as original, whereas with X-Men Apocalypse, these are characters that we've seen before. We have a new villain, technically, but he's just another big, boring bad guy. Frozen, technically original. No, it's not, because it's about the Ice Queen, but it was still able to captivate audiences because of its original portrayal of the sisters, which is something that really did not get much attention in the original Snow Queen fable. So, yeah, it's a really tough question, but like when you look at the pure numbers, just the stone cold facts, the numbers, the math, more original films are being made now than at any point in Hollywood history. But don't just support a film because it's original. Like, some of the worst films I've seen in recent years have been original films, like Grimsby, terrible film. 999 is a terrible film. But then you've got some really good films, like Anomalisa, like Zootropolis. What else have I also seen? Green Room. I was not a big fan of Sing Street. Sing Street's a great example. Sing Street is an original film. It is not based on any prior source material, but it still takes its inspiration, like, from the autobiographical aspect of its director, and it also draws inspiration from what was actually happening in the 80s, the real-life musical influences. It is taking inspiration from the past and turning it into something new today. Ant-Man, yes, is based off of a comic book series and is taking place in a cinematic universe, but name me one other film that you could have watched in 2015 that involved a shrinking man. You probably could if you delved very, 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 very deep and very, very obscure, but in terms of mainstream theatres, Ant-Man was an original film in the broader context of 2015. So when you say, Hollywood, I want more original films, think, what are you asking? Are you asking for movies that are not based off of sequels? Are you asking for movies that are not based off of real-life political or social economic concepts? Are you wanting movies that are not drawing inspiration from the past, like The Nice Guys? Are you asking for movies that are not drawing on fairy tales, even though they are technically turning them into something new? Or are you just basically saying, yeah, I want more original films, but I'm only doing that because it sounds like the right thing to say? Think about why you're asking it, and what you're asking, and also, most importantly, what are you going to follow through on? What are you going to support with your money? Are you going to see Maggie's Plan? Are you going to go see Songs for Amy? Are you going to go see Bad Moms? Are you going to go see Imperium? Are you going to go see Kubo and the Two Strings? Are you going to see Captain America 6 times and give your 7th ticket to Swiss Army Man? Or are you just going to see Captain America 7 times and just not see any of these original films? You've got to... do not have these empty threats. Do not yell at Jon Favreau for making unoriginal films. And Jon Favreau has made original films in the past, but once again, they do draw from real-life inspirations. Like, for example, Zathura that's an original film technically. It's not a sequel or a prequel or a remake, but it is essentially Jumanji in space. Jon Favreau made Elf. Elf is basically a live-action Rankin-Bass cartoon. They have the stop-motion figures. It is drawing from many other Christmas stories. It is technically original, but in terms of its actual themes, it is not original. What are you asking for when you say you want original films? It's a very loaded question, and I'm not here today to answer it. I cannot personally answer it for everybody, but when I think of Hollywood making more original films, I think they are doing their job just fine at the moment, and every so often we will get a big original film, like, say, think of it like this: when you have so many sequels and remakes and reboots coming out, they had to be original at some point. Now You See Me 2 came out this summer, but that had to start with an original Now You See Me back in 2013, which was quite successful. You had The Purge, which became The Purge Anarchy, and then Purge Election Year. These movies don't just come out of nowhere. They had to be original at some point. It's a loaded question, but when I think of whether or not you're actually going to support original films, or if you really do just have a massive bias against original films, are you just a broad sweepstake, everything original is bad? Like, I remember in the Movie Mania podcast, like, Bandit was saying how terrible, like, we were sending a message by downvoting the Ghostbusters trailer and not going to see it. We were sending a message that we were sick of remakes, we hated remakes to beloved properties, and then almost in the same breath he was saying how much he was looking forward to The Magnificent Seven. Where are you going to fight your battles? Once you figure that out for yourself, you can have a much more honest conversation with other people. But when I look at that list of all of the original films that are coming out just in the UK, there could be hundreds more in America, and I know for a fact I've missed out many, and some people have even called me stupid for saying that adaptations of books do not count as original movies. I don't personally understand where that thought process comes from, but if you were to count movies that are based off of books still as original films, if you're going to do that, fine. But that just also shows that they're making even more original films. But don't just support a film because it is original. Norm of the North, technically an original film. No. Jupiter Ascending, technically an original film. No, don't do it. Whereas something like, say, Captain America Civil War is not original, but it is easily the best film I've seen so far this year. Just because something is unoriginal does not mean it is bad, and just because something is original does not mean it is automatically great. Although when something is original, maybe give it more of the benefit of the doubt, maybe give it a chance, maybe actually spend that 7th ticket from Captain America Civil War and go and see Maggie's Plan, or The Neon Demon, or The Nice Guys, or Money Monster, or Cafe Society, or something else, something different. And when you think of, say, Netflix or We Are Colony and all of these other digital distribution services that are giving you lots more original content, the door blows wide open in terms of more original films. More original films are being made now than at any point in Hollywood history. And as a result, when the budgets are lower because they've got to be on smaller platforms, or they're not able to make as much money at the box office because everyone's going to see Captain America Civil War, they have to be a bit more creative. We are in a realm of unparalleled creativity. And if people just stopped saying we want more original films and actually looked at the numbers, actually looked at what is playing in the local multiplexes, actually turned on the TV and watched the trailers that play between the programs and saw that original films are being made, we could have a much healthier discussion and a much healthier industry. I think that's all I have to say about that subject. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Patreon questions. No, actually, let's talk about my DVD of the week. I do apologise, I almost missed out that segment. Let's go to DVD of the week. Last week, because I'm recording this on the Wednesday, because I saw Swiss Army Man. That's one hell of an original film. The Farting Corpse movie. That's something you really have never seen before. But you have something like The Nice Guys, which came out on DVD and Blu-ray in the UK last week. Now, The Nice Guys is directed by Shane Black, who did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, who wrote the original Lethal Weapon, and he also wrote and directed Iron Man 3, which is one of my favourite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. It is set in the late 1970s, and it stars Ryan Gosling as a private detective who's a bit of a scumbag. He's the type of guy who will go to somebody's house and be like, okay, I'm going to help find your missing husband. When was he last seen? And the wife says, since the funeral. And then he looks to the cupboard by his side and sees that her husband's ashes are up there. And she clearly has some form of maybe dementia or Alzheimer's and has just forgotten that her husband has died, or she just can't quite put the pieces together. He will take that case and get a bit of extra money. He is that guy. And you also have Russell Crowe, who is basically a hired goon who will beat people up for money or shut people up to send a message for payment. And these two wind up helping out each other to try and find a missing porn star who is we see die at the beginning of the movie. It's not a spoiler, we know she's dead, but her auntie insists that she has been seen alive and that there's this woman called Amelia who may know of her whereabouts. And what we have is a big conspiracy. We've got some really elaborate setups, and it is quite a complicated movie, but it's complicated in a knowing way. How it is convoluted, it is very, very elaborate. But the main drawing point for The Nice Guys is the relationship between Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. And I'm not the biggest Russell Crowe fan, but he was very, very good in this film. But Ryan Gosling was the guy who surprised me. Ryan Gosling has mainly made a name for himself in recent years as the silent, stoic, brooding type. But here, the comedy gold that he wrings out of every single scene. You've seen it in the trailer, like when when Russell Crowe comes in to try and break his arm, and he's like, no, no. And when he after the encounter, he now carries a gun with him on the off chance that Russell Crowe appears again, and he's in a toilet cubicle and he's trying to keep the door open while he's still sat down on the toilet. It's a brilliant scene. And you may think you may have seen all of those jokes in the trailer, but if you watch the film, you'll see that, yeah, that scene in the cubicle, that goes on for another couple of minutes, and it just gets funnier and funnier. And it's such a stylish, sexy, polished film. It really captures the free-thinking nature of the 1970s, where you did have these massive, elaborate parties where Earth, Water, Wind and Fire would be playing at these massive venues, and the neon lights and the elaborate dresses and the big hair and the big suits and the big costumes, and so much pornography and so much violence and so many flashy cars. It really does a great job at capturing that era. This was not a cheap movie to make. It's a $50 million budget, but it's money well spent, and the money is up on screen. And the action isn't incredible. It's mainly just a bunch of shootouts from behind cover. And I do think that it is a little bit too long to keep up that manic energy. It's almost 2 hours long, and I don't think it can quite keep up that energy throughout the entire duration. But what makes it really work is just the chemistry between this really unorthodox couple. And also, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Angourie Rice, I think. She is a 15-year-old girl who plays Ryan Gosling's daughter. She's going to be in the new Spider-Man Homecoming. She's terrific here. She's a great foil for the two guys. She's really good. She's got a very great presence, and if she plays the cards right, she has got a very good future ahead of her in terms of acting career. And Kim Basinger has a small role in this film as well, and she's pretty cool. So The Nice Guys is my DVD/Blu-ray of the week. Be sure to check it out now, especially if you're one of those guys who wants to complain about there being no original movies. Because this is an original movie that came out, Warner Brothers put a ton of money into the marketing, and you never saw it. You had the opportunity to go see it. It was playing at almost every single multiplex in the country. It got a wide release, and you didn't see it. And people loved it. People were very, very appraising of the film. It has it's 92% of Rotten Tomatoes. It was the talk of the town for ages, and you didn't go see it, which makes me sad. It makes me very, very sad. So yeah, let's get to the Patreon questions. Question number 1. Well, basically, if you want to know how you can get to these Patreon questions, is that you go on my Patreon, www.patreon.com/Trilbee, and if you pay above a certain bracket, you can ask as many questions as you want, and you can dictate the topics that I talk about, or ask questions, or you can even have a soapbox. You can even just use this opportunity to rant or ramble about whatever you want, and I'll read it out, and we can even have a debate. So be sure to go on my Patreon and try and because it also helps to support the show as well. So I massively appreciate that, especially since I didn't get paid last month. So yeah, please do that. So first question comes from Winter. I've got 2 questions. What do you think of the MCU TV series? Winter's actually spelt it like that. It's not my fault. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Luke Cage, etc. And what are your top 5 films in terms of rewatchability? First question. So the MCU TV series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Luke Cage and such. I've not finished Daredevil, Series 2, not finished that. I've not started Luke Cage, and I watched the first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I didn't finish it. So I'm told that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Got better with Series 2, but it didn't pick up enough viewers, so that Series 3 was basically just a pandering shipping show. But Daredevil and Jessica Jones are terrific. They are very mature, but not in a whole darkness, no parents type mature. In an actual mature themes, mature stories, mature characters. In an actual... They use the serialized nature of television very, very well. You get to grow and learn with these characters as they do. You get to unravel these mysteries with them. And I think Daredevil is maybe the more... what's the word? Not mainstream, but it's the more welcoming show. It's got some very pleasing action sequences, and it's got some very great moments and really memorable set pieces. But I think Jessica Jones is the better show in terms of its dramatic heft, because Jessica Jones is basically an allegory for rape survival and for domestic abuse, and I think the Purple Man, played by David Tennant, is one of the best TV villains in a long time, and I think he does an absolutely stellar work. I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen Jessica Jones, but some of the stuff he does is dark and depraved and great television. So I think they're firing on all cylinders at the moment. I'm only a couple of episodes into Daredevil Series 2, and I'm going to be finishing Luke Cage by this weekend because we're going to be talking about Netflix stuff on the Movie Mania podcast. So I look forward to letting you know what I think of all of those. But so far, great stuff. And Agent Carter is solid. It's solid stuff. I think Hayley Atwell is great, but I just think that maybe there's a couple of episodes which I just write off entirely, and that involves the Howling Commandos. I just wrote those episodes off entirely. They just weren't very engaging. But I really like her. I like the characters more than I like the story. I just like following these people more than the adventures that they actually go on. That was my main enjoyment for Agent Carter. So what are your top 5 films in terms of rewatchability? Can I cheat and just name 3 right off the bat? The Cornetto trilogy. Those are just 3 films that I could watch over and over and over again and just still see something new. Spot a new joke, spot a new sight gag, something in the background. Those are just so densely packed with detail and jokes. So those are 3 films right there. Especially The World's End. That is the film that just... I remember giving it like a 7 out of 10 the first time I saw it, and then I just watched it more and more and more and just grew to love it. Absolutely love that film. Okay, so after a quick bit of thought, another film I just can watch over and over and over and over again is Airplane. Airplane is, I think, one of the funniest movies ever made. It's up there with Monty Python and the Holy Grail in terms of just movies that make me laugh at the jokes multiple times, no matter how many times I see it. But I think Airplane actually has a few more background gags, and it gives more jokes per second. Like sometimes you're laughing so hard you actually miss another joke. So yeah, that's technically 2 if I were to count Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But I will also name another. A film that I literally do watch every year is It's a Wonderful Life. It is one of the most life-affirming movies ever. It makes me, honestly, I blub like a baby every single time I see it. It's just so wonderful, and it goes to such dark places, but it's able to parlay that darkness with just such boundless optimism, and that ending is just, it warms my heart every time I see it. And It's a Wonderful Life is just, in my opinion, one of the greatest movies ever made. Okay, so hopefully those are good enough answers for you, Winter. Now it's time for Dean Jones, who has been knighted on this podcast last month. Hopefully he doesn't disappoint. Speaking of disappoint, what has been your biggest disappointment in film in 2016 so far? Mine is Batman: The Killing Joke. Let me think on that. Some of the biggest disappointments of 2016. I'm just going to go through all of the list of films I've seen and reviewed in 2016. Revenant, I didn't really have any expectations for that to begin with. I'm trying to think of films I was really anticipating. Kung Fu Panda 3, I didn't hate. I actually thought it was pretty solid, but I was expecting a lot more because the first 2 are just so great. Green Room, I heard such fantastic things about, and then when I saw it, it was just really mediocre. Money Monster, I expected a little bit more from. There aren't many films that I was flat out disappointed by. Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman. Let's just go for the DC stuff. These are films that I just wanted so desperately to be good, and they were just so phenomenally pants. When it comes to, say, Batman: The Killing Joke, the reason I wouldn't rate that as a big disappointment was because it really was, it was something I saw coming from a mile away when I first saw the trailers out, and I heard all the stuff they were doing with Batgirl, but also, I can easily just read The Killing Joke. That's just the film is just a direct, for the most part, lift from that graphic novel, whereas Batman v Superman, this is the first time we've seen these 2 characters live action on the big screen. Suicide Squad is the first time we're going to see Harley Quinn, and it could be the DC version of Guardians of the Galaxy, but instead it was just really, really shit. So those are probably my disappointments, really. Sorry that I don't have a big elaborate answer for you, but there are a couple of films, like I said, like Money Monster and Green Room, where I expected a lot more from it, but yeah, it's got to be Batman v Superman. I'm really hoping that Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them pulls through, because that was my most anticipated film for 2016. So and the trailers haven't really had me hyped. The latest one is a very strong trailer, but I was hoping for that a lot earlier, so I'm a bit concerned that that Warner Brothers may not have done a great job with it, but we'll see how it goes. Also, Dean says, could you give a shout out to my Instagram, which is Dean Jones 1992. That's all one word, Dean Jones 1992. He says, I haven't had much chance to do YouTube content, so if you want to know my thoughts on movies, TV, etc., then be sure to follow me on there. Yeah, follow him on Instagram. He is the official knighted representative of the Film Brits Podcast, so go check that out. Zachary Taylor asks, what do you think is the best direct-to-video movie, one for live action and animation? I hate to disappoint Zach, but I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure I've seen some direct-to-video movies, or like, I'm not sure. When I think of direct-to-video animation films, I do tend to think of like the Marvel and DC ones, or ones that are based off of an established property, but best direct-to-video movie. There could be stuff like direct-to-Netflix. Does that count? Like direct-to-demand? If so, I really don't have an answer for that. I need to check out some more direct-to-video. I need to learn more about that scene, because it's stuff that's kind of in a weird state at the moment, because you do have, I imagine you still obviously have the sci-fi, the asylum, exploitation, low budget, high concept, rip-off stuff like Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, or Sharknado, or what's the name of that Suicide Squad? What's it called? What's the Suicide Squad version? I can't find it. I've just googled it. What's it called? Like the Asylum did Transmorphers instead of Transformers, and they've done. What's it called? What is it? Sinister Squad. They did Sinister Squad. But apart from that, I don't really know much else about the direct-to-DVD, direct-to-video scene. I know a lot of stuff goes on We Are Colony, and stuff, of course, goes on to Netflix, but I don't really have a standout example, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, Zachary, but maybe if you could recommend a few to me, maybe if you message me via Patreon and just let me know what your favourites are. But, yeah, in terms of animation as well, it's hard to say, because some of the big ones, like say The Killing Joke, did technically have a release date and did have a day and date release in cinemas. It got a limited theatrical run, so how do you classify that? So yeah, sorry to disappoint Zachary, but maybe if you could recommend some to me. I know I'm going to be watching Hush over the next couple of days, because Trey from the Movie Mania podcast has recommended it to me, and apparently that's I think Netflix is a distributor on it. I don't know if it's an entirely Netflix exclusive film, but I don't know if Netflix original or on-demand original stuff counts in what you're asking for, Zachary. So, but do let me know, and please recommend some to me, or point me in the right direction of some companies or some actors who have done very strong direct-to-video stuff. Okay, and next question is from Samuel Atkinson. What would you like to see in Star Wars Episode 8? Original stuff. Now, I know that it sounds like me being very, very awkward, but I liked Star Wars Episode 7. I thought it was a solid reintroduction to the franchise, but I feel like it was so obsessed with recapturing the... I understand recapturing the feel of the classic trilogy. I get that completely. But also recapturing the structure, the plot, and so many recurring elements from the original trilogy. It just felt like it was so afraid to actually explore uncharted territory. And I'm hoping that Episode 8 will do that, because with Episode 7 you had these great new original characters, but you had them doing stuff that the previous characters had done in the previous trilogy. And it just felt... I know a lot of people defended it by saying, oh, it's to get you over the prequels, it's to let you know that Star Wars is in safe hands again. The marketing campaign should have done that. Just the marketing campaign. If the marketing campaign had been exactly how it was, but then the movie was wholly original, but it still had that feel, we could have had a much, much better Episode 7, in my opinion. I just felt like Episode 7 was so afraid to do something different, then I'm hoping Episode 8 does that. I'm hoping that Episode 7 has set up these characters, this scenario, and this future world. and it actually explores it now, because episode 7, the original stuff like that we want to know about, like what happened with Kylo Ren, why did Luke leave, why is Han Solo the exact same character he was like 20, 30 years ago? Why is he not changed? Why is he exactly the same person? What happened between 6 and 7 to make him stay on this exact same path? I just want it to branch out more. And hopefully when you've got Rian Johnson and a different director, we're going to get more of that. So that's my main concern with episode 8, that it just is a retread of episode 5. That is my main concern. And hopefully it just doesn't do that. It's one reason why I'm looking forward to Rogue One more than I was looking forward to episode 7. Because I felt like Rogue One was going to be exploring, for the most part, an entirely new cast of characters in a familiar situation, but it was going to be an original scenario for the Star Wars universe. It was going to be this undercover heist robbery mission with these delinquents. I felt like that it's a much more interesting story than, oh, let's just redo the trench run. Let's just redo somebody on a desert planet wanting to find adventure. Let's redo a droid having the plans again. I just felt like it really was so afraid to branch out that it actually forgot to do anything new. It did a couple of things new, but honestly not enough to really justify the massive hype and the $2 billion gross, or however much it made in the end. That's my concern. Now, it's that time. It is time for the lightning round. Now, these questions on Twitter I have not seen. And basically, if you're lucky, you'll be on Twitter or Facebook when I do the call saying I'm going to be doing the 60-second lightning round. Basically, these are questions that I have not seen, I have not had screened to me, or I have not looked at or peeked or whatever. And each one is going to get 60 seconds. So, Twitter. And I have a lot of notifications. Okay. I won't do all of them, but I'll see what happens. Okay. I feel I'll scroll down quite a bit. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Patrick asks, Mufasa and Scar fan cast for the live-action Lion King. That's a tough one. I would love to say Idris Elba as Scar, but we've just had him as Shere Khan in the Jungle Book. So Mufasa is you do need that deep, booming, imposing voice, or you could actually go in a different direction. Maybe go for a Michael Fassbender, maybe slightly more understated but very authoritative. So yeah, okay, let's go Michael Fassbender for Scar. No, Michael Fassbender for Mufasa. And who would you pick for Scar? Jeremy Irons, still alive, still awesome. He probably could do a pretty good job. But Scar, Idris Elba's been taken, I guess, so let's go for a different choice. I'm sure people listening to the podcast are just screaming out great examples to me. Not Jared, I'm thinking of recent villains. Jared Leto, no, not him. Sacha Baron Cohen, no. Okay, well, okay, that's the minute up, but Michael Fassbender for Mufasa. Who could be Scar? I'm looking around at my DVD collection. Carl Urban? Like, Dredd is over there. Maybe Carl Urban. Okay, Carl Urban for Scar and Michael Fassbender for Mufasa. Those are not remotely informed decisions, but those are ones off the top of my head. They're interesting choices, at least. So, okay, next question. 3, 2, 1, go. Undead Jedi Marvelite asks, your reaction to WB/DC announcing the Suicide Squad extended cut? David Ayer said that the version that was going to be released in theatres was the ultimate cut, it was the only cut, it was his vision, and today they announced that they were going to be doing a extended cut. After Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which had a pretty pants extended cut in my humble opinion, this does not bode well. This is basically a revisionist cinematic universe, and I know that extended cuts have been a constant for the past 10 to 15, 20 years, but the fact that you have to have a continuity-driven cinematic universe that is reliant on extended or alternate cuts does not bode well for this universe. Hopefully, but at the same time, they're basically saying, yes, we know we are releasing unfinished movies, and you're just going to double dip and pay for them anyway, and it just makes me completely pissed off, honestly. That's your minute. I'm just pissed off for that announcement. Okay, next question. Tony Kogan asks, what other film-related podcasts would you recommend people listen to? I'm just going to quickly go onto my podcasts on my phone. Okay, I listen to the John Campea podcast, the Co-optional podcast, but that's game related, Movie Mania, the Empire podcast, Empire Magazine, Weekly Planet, Collider Movie Talk, and Kermode and Mayo. Those are the podcasts that I listen to. So you only got 60 seconds, but that is you only got 30 seconds, but that is basically the answer. That's the ones that I listen to. Those are the ones that I recommended. And Tony's also said, if you don't listen to them already, I recommend you listen to the Lambcast, Filmwise, and French Toast Sunday. Not just saying that as I've been on 2 of them and I'm friends with the people who run them. So thank you for disclosing that information, but I'll be sure to check them out. Okay, next question. 3, 2, 1, go. Miles the Junkman asks, is there any director who you think has never made a bad film? Andrew Stanton. Has Andrew Stanton not made a bad film? Let's have a look. Andrew Stanton, he has directed he directed A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, WALL-E, John Carter. Oh, John Carter broke the trend. What else have we got? I don't think Tarantino has made a bad movie, just maybe films that I'm not a massive fan of. I'm not a huge fan of... I don't hate Jackie Brown, I'm just not a massive fan of it. And also Kill Bill Volume 2 is just not nearly as good as Kill Bill Volume 1. Other directors do I... Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright's not made a bad movie, but he doesn't make as many. I don't think Jon Favreau's made a bad film. Iron Man 2 is just average. I really like... Cowboys and Aliens. It's tough. I'm trying to think of more contemporary directors, because sometimes you can be like, oh, Orson Welles, Alfred Hitchcock. Trying to think of more contemporary ones, but that's a tough question. I might need a bit more time for that one, but those are mine. And even then, I think of Jon Favreau or Andrew Stanton. There's one in there. There's one. Okay. Okay. Next question. Oh, need to reset my timer. What am I doing? What have I done? I've messed up horribly. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Garen Howells asks, have there been any movies you've seen in 2016 that was so bad they were good? Not really. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. There are films like The Shallows, which I think are genuinely good, but there's a moment towards the end of the film, near Blake Lively and the rock she's on, is a whale that is decomposing, and there's a load of whale oil that's just floating on the water next to it. And there's a moment involving the whale oil that I just thought awesome, and my girlfriend who was sat next to me watching it just thought this is really, really stupid. Maybe The Shallows, but I still think it's just really solid and really good filmmaking. I'm just going through the list. What else is there? The films that were so bad they were good. Not really. Not that I can think of, but The Shallows maybe comes closest to mind. Maybe once I'm catching up on all the films, I know I need to watch The Fifth Wave and a few other films that I missed in their theatrical run, so maybe I will find something, but there haven't been many this year, to be honest. Okay, let's go for the next question. Okay, Claire Kerry asks, you talked about American Crime Story last week. What are your thoughts on The Night Manager and American Horror Story? Gotta be honest, I've not seen The Night Manager. I've caught a couple of clips of it, but I've actually not seen it. I've not watched a full episode or even half an episode. But American Horror Story, I've seen the first 2 seasons. The first one, which is set in the house, felt like a real kitchen sink approach to horror, where it was just, deformed man, ghosts, creepy people, or all of this. Because basically every horror trope they wanted to get into one series, and I think it feels overstuffed and unfocused, but it's still kind of works because of its commitment to the genre and the talent of the cast. As for series 2, it just got too long. It's 3 or 4 episodes too long, so it means that the finale, the climax, just meanders around a lot. But I love the aesthetic of it. I love how dark and how depraved they're willing to go in this asylum. But that's really all I've seen of American Horror Story. They've got series 3 and 4 on Netflix, and my girlfriend's got series 3 on Blu-ray, but I've not watched it. So there we go. More questions. Okay, this is a Doctor Who related question. Let's do a couple of those. 1, 2, 3, go. Series 2 finale or Series 3 finale? Series 2 finale. Series 3, the Utopia, Sound of Drums and the Last of the Time Lords. Utopia's amazing. Utopia holds up. Derek Jacobi's probably the best master we've had in the revived series, and he's only on screen for a couple of minutes. But I think Sound of Drums would have been better if it was a Dr. Light story and it was all about the Master. It kind of feels like whenever the Doctor shows up with John Barrowman and Freeman Rajaman, that the plot kind of slows down. And I think that the Last of the Time Lords has a very ambitious ending, but I feel like it was just a bit too big for its own boots. I feel like it was a bit overstuffed, but it still worked, and I really like the companion stuff they do. Whereas with Doomsday, it's just great to see Rose Tyler go. I'm not gonna lie, that is so satisfying. And while the Cybermen are treated like absolute pants, in that like they can't even destroy one Dalek, it just feels like a big insult to the Cybermen. I think Russell T Davies has so much fun writing the Cybermen, and I love the Army of Ghosts setup. I think that great cliffhanger as well. That's your minute, I'm afraid. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. George asks, if the superhero movie bubble was to burst, what genre of films, anime, video game, etc. could be the next big thing? I don't think the bubble's going to burst. I think it's just going to slowly decline. I think there's going to be a few diminishing returns. But even then, they could just mix things up by making the budgets lower to accommodate. So I don't know if it is going to burst. But if it did burst, probably video games. It would depend on how Assassin's Creed does. I've not yet watched Warcraft. As soon as that thing's out on DVD, I'm watching it because that's so intriguing to me. But yeah, probably video games, if they get that right. They are really trying. Ubisoft have actually set up their own movie division to oversee Assassin's Creed and the Division and Tom Clancy's and all of this stuff. So hopefully they do it. Hopefully they do it well. But I would say video games. I don't think anime... It quite has the Western influence that it did in the 90s. I think that it's very niche. So if you were going to do that, it would be maybe more the indie market, like maybe a $20 million One Punch Man movie to come out. But yeah, that I think it's going to be video games. Okay, next question, the final question from Edward Sweet is, which films would you say make the best double feature? Which films would you say make the best double feature? Double feature. I've not watched a double feature, a properly orchestrated double feature. Sometimes I watch 3 films in a row because, you know, I've got to watch them and review them, but best double feature. You may need to come back to me on that one, Edward, because I can't think of one off the top of my head. I'm quite tired. It's gone past midnight and I've been recording for a while, so yeah. I can't answer that, I'm afraid. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Looking around me... I'm trying to think of ones that aren't in a series, like Casino Royale and Skyfall, or Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2, or The Thing and The Thing remake. Okay, I'm going to cheat. Halloween and Halloween 2. That's really all I can think of. I think that those films complement each other so well. I think the whole story, Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, is better than... The whole is better than the sum of their parts. I think it follows on incredibly well, and I think it's such a satisfying story. Like, I am in the minority, right? I think Halloween 2 is better than Halloween. I'm in the minority. No shame. 4 stars, I don't care. 4 stars, no regrets. But yeah, I think Halloween and Halloween 2 are such a great double feature. In terms of films that aren't connected, I couldn't think of one right now, but if I do, I'll respond via Twitter. So thank you so much for listening to the Film Brits Podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast and also dictate the content, then be sure to follow my Patreon, www.patreon.com/Trilbee. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Trilbee Reviews. Be sure to follow me on YouTube on Trilbee Reviews. And be sure to subscribe on iTunes via Film Brits and also on SoundCloud, where you can listen to an audio-only version of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening to this installment. And what do you think about original films in Hollywood? Do you think that there are more original films now? Well, you should, because it's the fact. It's like saying, the sky is not blue. There are no original films. I'm tired. I apologise for the ramble. So thank you so much for listening, and I shall see you folks next time.